Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily. Coming up, the regular season is over, folks. Warriors-Clippers gave us a thriller. Zena was there, so we're going to talk to her, and we're going to catch up on the crazy last day of the season. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, guys. We have somehow made it. 82 games in the books for every single team.
So
congratulations, guys.
We said we couldn't do it.
So we couldn't do it.
I don't think anyone said we couldn't do it. You know,
I understand it now. You know?
Yes, you do. Guys, we got to start with the last game of the day. It went to overtime. So we got free basketball from 3 separate games on the last day of the season. It was the biggest game of the day, Warriors-Clippers, and it was for the playoffs. Zena, the Clippers looked much better, I thought, than the Warriors. That defense looks like it's ready for the playoffs. What'd you think? You were in the building.
Yeah, I was in the building, and I will say everything lived up to the hype in terms of the atmosphere, the energy, the games, the battle of the Titans. I mean, everyone stepped up between both of these two teams. 6 players had 20 or more points. Like, I mean, it was legitimate battling out there. The funny thing is that, yes, even though the Clippers did look like they were executing their game plan more, the Warriors technically won 3 out of the 4 quarters.
Yeah.
If you're not counting overtime. And that's where things really shifted and tilted towards the Clippers, is because they had James Harden, the Clippers did, and the Warriors didn't. James Harden outscored the Warriors on his own 12-8, I believe, in the overtime period. But it was such a true playoff atmosphere. And guess what? I will raise my hand as one of those people that was wondering, where's playoff Jimmy? I know he's coming, but where is he? And it just seemed like you needed an atmosphere. You needed people chanting MVP in the first quarter, and all these cheers in Rockets Arena. That's when playoff Jimmy showed up. Unbelievable performance from him tonight.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I thought like every single star on both teams showed up. Kawhi Leonard, surgical in the way that he carved up this team. I mean, he had 33 on 20 shots. He was just a robot, no wasted steps. James Harden, the way he took over in overtime, I thought that was just like special compared to, he's having an all NBA level season. And I thought that was kind of the cream, cherry on top, if you will. Steph Curry, the way that he turned up in that fourth quarter to get the Warriors back in the game, because it looked like it was over for a little bit. It looked like there was no energy.
Fourth quarter for Steph. That was huge. Yep.
So generally, I thought the stars showed up. It was awesome. It was the exact game we wanted.
Thing that stood out to me was how big the Clippers seemed compared to the Warriors. And I think down the stretch, you think about the lobs to Zubac, the rebounds. I mean, the Warriors didn't have the size to be able to withstand. I mean, Ben Simmons actually was making an impact just by being big around there. Yeah. Zena, this is something we talked about for the Warriors for years now. Are you feeling comfortable as they go into, I mean, they're going to have to win a play-in game, against the Memphis Grizzlies. Obviously the Grizzlies have some size. How are you feeling about the Warriors and their lack of size heading into the play-in and the playoffs?
I mean, the lack of size is real. However, the pace is what I'm hoping the Warriors exploit for Memphis, because we've seen in the last few weeks that Memphis's bigs can't keep up with the pace with which their guards play. Yeah. And I would say that the way that the Warriors are playing small ball right now, they probably will be able to keep up in that way. So that's the only hope for the Warrior side. If I'm looking from a Memphis perspective, perimeter, attack the paint. That was the key issue in the fourth quarter and in overtime in terms of why the Clippers were even in the game while Steph Curry was putting up ridiculous numbers. Paint penetration was wide open. They just kept going inside and being able to score at will. So if I'm Memphis, I'm just like, pick and roll, Ja and Zach, like, let's go eat. But yeah, it's going to be a good playoff atmosphere again, because Memphis and Warriors definitely have some history, a little bit different. Of course, they got a new coach in the situation, but it's funny. Steve Kerr said in his post-game interview, asked about the play-in, particularly the Warriors' history in the play-in, which is not very good. Not the best. Yeah. He finally said, he was like, I have no recollection of the play-in because there's no stats. There's no evidence of the play-in. So he's like, that experience has vanished from my mind. And you hope that for both teams to enter in this situation.
Yeah.
Someone else didn't have any stats. in the game yesterday. Jonathan Kuminga did not play.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And Zena, you really brought this up last week where you were concerned about some of the fit issues on the court. Steve Kerr has said it, he said it in an interview, and now we have Kuminga it looks like as we're heading into the playoffs, just going to be out of the rotation. I mean, is that your read on it too?
Yeah, this is what Anthony Slater, shout out to The Athletic, of course. Anthony Slater got that information from Steve Kerr pre-game that during their walkthrough, he told Jonathan that the rotation the first quarter is going to be different. We're going to shift away, which basically the minutes that Jonathan Kuminga had in the first quarter coming off the bench went to Gary Payton II. Right. And you see that and it makes sense, particularly from a defensive perspective. But one thing that Gary Payton II does really well is not only, let's see where he finished out tonight, added 3 rebounds? Okay. 3 assists. Yeah. But the big thing that Gary Payton does is defense. Yeah. That's huge. Yep. He can guard your best player on the other side of the ball, but he also spaces well. And another thing that Steve Kerr said at the end of the game or in post-game today is that Jimmy Butler is so good that you don't have to run anything for him. You could just throw him the ball and you just make sure there's spacing. Mm-hmm. And that's something that Jonathan Kuminga and Jimmy have not quite figured out yet since his arrival and since Jonathan Kuminga's return to the court. And so it makes sense that, Steve shifted away from them, but he didn't say it was going to be a whole game situation. He told Jonathan just expect a difference, and it ended up being a DNP.
I don't think Gary Payton is the right call here. I actually would have gone and asked, back me up if you agree or push back if you disagree. Sure. Moses Moody should have been the guy because, and you said, Zena, that Gary Payton spaces, but he's a hesitant shooter. And so they were leaving him open, and it was kind of clogging up their space down the stretch. And I just thought also having a little bit more length and size because they were struggling to rebound. I think Moses Moody would have been, if you could do this one over, right? Like you say, I'm going to close with Moses Moody.
Yeah, look, Moody still played 30 minutes, and you think like the way that he was guarding at the point of attack to start in that first half was awesome. It was enough to keep you afloat. And so I think he brings similar things that Gary Payton does defensively. I think some of the things, to your point, Zena, about the athleticism and kind of springing into action, GP2 is just a little bit better at recognizing certain moments to get the ball. Moody, on the other hand, though, is a much more willing offensive player. And so I think about that final possession where Gary Payton Jr. is in the short roll. He passes it to Draymond Green, but it's a little delayed. I think in those type of moments, having Moody as a guy who's a little bit more offensively adept, that's the type of guy you want in those situations. And Draymond misses that shot. So, you know what I mean? So,
and just for clarity, I want to make sure, I'm not saying that Gary Payton II is a spacer because he's not a religious shooter that way. But he just, as S was saying, he has the heads up play to say, let me get out of this space. Let me cut in at this moment. Let me get to the short corner. Like he finds a way to read the plays, I think, in a more elevated way than Jonathan Kuminga does now. I
agree with that. And there are highlights with the Kuminga, Draymond, Jimmy Butler trio being on the court, and you just say, okay, well, the Kuminga does not fit, period. Yeah. Like he doesn't know where to fit.
Steve Kerr is right that it doesn't work. Steve Kerr is really right that it doesn't work.
I do want to say, though, before I know he's just spent a lot of time on Jonathan Kuminga, we got to give props to Brandin Podziemski.
Yeah. Great game.
Huge. Especially considering the bad game that he had against, was it the Spurs? Just have been having some great games, fell off for a second and came back big time. Yeah. I think that's a huge factor. Had some interesting moments as well, had some turnovers himself, but still really great shooter, big time plays. And I think he's ready this time around for the playoffs.
Yeah. He got stuck with that one grenade and wound up traveling. Which,
I know.
In the NBA, I didn't even think you could get that call. We've been talking a lot the last few weeks about peaking at the right time. And the Warriors, and Zena, you've been hammering this. They haven't played anybody since they got Jimmy Butler, really. It's a little bit of a paper tiger. The Clippers have, though. And this is another example of them, they're peaking at the right time. Kawhi puts up 33. It's 15 games to close the season with 20 or more points for him. It's one of these things where we're once again finding ourselves rolling into the playoffs. Kawhi Leonard looking like a top 12, top 10, top 8. And you get a guy like that in a playoff series, man, the Clippers are dangerous.
Bit of a rhetorical question here, but how many players are you taking over Kawhi Leonard in an elimination type of game? I don't think you get to 5 before mentioning Kawhi's name. So like that's the level of player that the Clippers are getting. I have to issue a bit of an apology to the Clippers in general, because to start the year, I was not that high on this team. I think consensus in general was not very high on this team. Thought people would be falling out of the play-in, wouldn't get to that point, especially with how competitive the West was. This team, Harden has continued to play all NBA basketball. The guys in Norm Powell and Ivica Zubac and Derek Jones Jr. have stepped into larger roles. Their defense has been electric. We saw it tonight. And like you said, Dave, Kawhi is peaking at just the right time. It's like they found out, okay, play the second half of the season and we're good.
The perfect amount of games somehow.
Yeah.
I even went back through the Basketball Reference. I was like looking at his game logs and just the way that they warmed him up. Yeah. They maybe nailed it. We'll see. I'm going to knock on wood for Kawhi. Yeah. Guys, stick around after the break. We're going to talk about how crazy Sunday was and throw some stats at you. Sunday was awesome if you're an NBA fan. The game started really early, and then they were all on at the same time, and we lucked out. We got some weird overtime games, and we got the awesome Warriors-Clippers game. A lot of crazy numbers out there, guys. What's the craziest stat that you saw from Sunday?
I'll just go ahead and mention it because it's crazy in its own right. Pat Connaughton dropped 43 points, had 11 rebounds, and had 5 assists. Made 5 threes in the overtime win for the Bucks. That's just what?
I thought Kuzma was going to be the 40-point guy in that game because he had 22 in the first quarter.
They combined for 62 points.
And I'm just thinking, this is going to be a great Kuz game. But then Kuz doesn't play the second half, and he comes out after halftime in street clothes. I love that,
but still wacky.
It's still wacky. Yeah. Zena, what about you?
This is going to be based off the fact that when Cleveland played the Pacers this week and basically sat all their starters, my entire X feed was like, Tristan Thompson's still in the league? Like a lot of people were fascinated, especially because Kenny Atkinson got ejected out of the game, standing up for him. Well, he showed his worth. 3 points and 20 rebounds on Sunday. Okay. He's still in the league, y'all, showing up.
That's Dennis Rodman numbers, that's pretty impressive.
Do what you got to do to stay on the floor. Okay?
To me, you know what I didn't realize, guys, is Chris Paul played all 82 games.
Yes.
That's kind of amazing. He's only done it one other time in his career. He did it 10 years ago, the 14-15 season. And, it was all over social media, obviously making a big deal out of it. But at his age, to play all 82 games and for a guy that we know to be injury prone, that's something. That was actually very surprising to see even.
First player in NBA history also to do it 20th season or later, which is just that goes to show you. We talk about LeBron and Steph and all the longevity. Right. Chris Paul got to be up there, man.
He deserves something, some sort of recognition, because as much as we just pour it on for LeBron and Steph, being able to be available 82 games in a row. Y'all, we weren't even available 82 games in a row. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
That's true.
Hey, is he back? Do you guys think Chris Paul comes back next year?
You know what? I hope so. I don't know if he's going to stay in San Antonio, but it's one of these.
Should.
Yeah, he was good.
He's still playing well. He got a lot of people to coach still.
Yeah. Did you guys catch Bub Carrington's shot? Bub Carrington hits the game winner for the Wizards, and it moves them to 18 wins on the season. Utah finishes with 17 wins, and that means Bub Carrington's not only did he hit a game winner, but he tanked their tank season on the end of the regular season final day. I love that so much. A buzzer beater.
That's awesome.
To take them out of the top spot in the lottery.
So
if the Wizards get the 6th pick somehow and it's all Bub Carrington's fault, that's funny. Very funny.
There's a little bit of built-in job protection though if you're Bub Carrington. This means it's a lesser player coming in.
We might have a surprise appearance right now. You want to come behind the camera?
Is it Marcus Thompson or is it
Law
Murray?
Dave?
Law Murray in the house.
This camera.
This is why we like the podcast being live. Law, what'd you think? Since we're just going to interrupt the show, final day of the season. What'd you think?
final day, final minutes, everything. I'm looking at every single NBA game being over, and here these buses was playing in an overtime to decide a playoff spot. I had never seen something like that before.
Is Zubac the defensive player of the year?
He had 0 fouls in 40 minutes playing against those dudes. Playing in the building of the guy who started his campaign a little early. I haven't gotten an email yet, but today moved me a little bit. I'm just going to say that.
Not bad.
Steve loves that. In his post-game presser, he was absolutely convinced it is Draymond's award, but he's, quote, a little biased.
Yeah. No one, see, and I'll say this, no one is caping for Zoo like that. I mean, you had Kawhi after the game saying he wanted Chris Dunn on the all-defensive team. Guess what? You can't even vote for Chris Dunn because the NBA decided that you got to play enough minutes in certain games. That dude's going to have 70 games, starting a bunch of them, and somehow not be eligible for that award. So I think that's going to get looked at for sure. But if it's a Zubac, he made his impact. And, Draymond Green did too. This game would have ended in regulation. He got the stop at the end of regulation. So whoever gets votes, I'm not going to give voters too much credit. I know some of y'all don't look at the games like Zena do, but I will tell you right now, whoever gets votes, earn them votes. You know what I'm saying? So no disrespect there. I think we need to just focus on celebrating who winds up winning and who winds up being in consideration. Everyone's got weaknesses and shortcomings. It's a matter of what do you do best and how often do you do it? And we saw a great display of ball on both ends of the floor tonight for sure.
Yeah, you're going to pop in this week and we'll talk Clippers Nuggets. Law Murray, that's my guy. That series is going to be just.
I love when the Athletic just shows up in different arenas.
Yeah, well, it's a great thing. It's what we do. We got to talk Chauncey Billups. Hey, a great season in Portland, rewarded with a contract extension. He got off to a rough start there, and I don't know if anyone thought he was going to make it this long, much less get an extension. But they have good players, and he did a pretty good job, I think, of coaching them up. They almost made a run at the play-in. They had a great season.
Yeah, I always remember that quote that's kind of become a favorite here on the podcast where Chauncey Billups called his team basically losers if they slept after a 3-game losing streak. And then they answered back by being an awesome team for the rest of the season. So maybe they do respond to what he has. I am curious they didn't go out and try to do a search for someone else in a like Mark Jackson, Steve Kerr type of way. Like, is there another coach that can take us to that next level? Because I really do think this Blazers team can get to that next level. But I guess they just trust in Chauncey to be able to do it.
Zia, what's the next level for them? What's the next step? You think next year they could be, is this a Piston style team that's, threatening to be a 6 seed or they're fighting for the play-in? You think about the West getting older?
Right. And that's the biggest thing. I think if you're looking at Denny Avdia, Shaedon Sharpe, Donovan Clingan, kind of building around those 3 players. Anthony Simon's in that conversation as well, but he might want to explore. You never know. He might not want to follow in the footsteps of Dame. Yeah. But I think that's the biggest thing is you have a core of size, athleticism, and scoring, particularly in those 3. And so you have something to work with. But honestly, shout out to Chauncey because every single one of those players, whether it's Anthony, whether it's Scoot Henderson, Toumani Camara, they all got better. And we're playing really well and connected and defensively, especially to close the season. So shout out to Chauncey Billups. I think he really did a great job of making something, not necessarily out of nothing, but something out of something that was a little bit disconnected.
Yeah. And no NBA regular season would be complete without heading into the playoffs with an injury concern lingering over the entire thing. Jaylen Brown for the Boston Celtics is undergoing pain-killing injections in his knee. I mean, we watched him, was it last weekend? Or we watched him really, really struggling to just get around the court for 20 minutes. If they're doing pain-killing injections now and you have a week of rest, I guess the hope is that, there's healing and he doesn't have to suffer in the meantime. Maybe he can get some practice in. I'm not sure, but that's a big deal.
Give them the first round off. That's my opinion. The Celtics can beat any of those teams with the first round without Jaylen Brown. That's how confident you should be in how good this Boston Celtics team is. Give them the first round off. Get them ready for round 2 versus New York or whoever it ends up being. You know?
Not worried about any rust, Zena? You think he could just take the first round?
No, I mean, Jaylen Brown's so athletic that it's like, you know how kids can just like run a mile in 5 minutes after never like that's I feel like Jaylen Brown is very athletic where he could pop right back and not have any issues. It does. I mean, I didn't really think about that, but yeah, like what is the worst thing that could happen if you sit Jaylen Brown? I don't know.
Against the Atlanta Hawks.
It's going to be the Hawks, right? Yeah, I mean, maybe it's the Bulls, but
I didn't even consider that. But now I think that's smart.
It's an interesting idea. Yeah. You guys got any big takeaways from the season? You know, a favorite memory, anything? Just what do you want to remember about this season?
Oh, man. I will say, I think despite all of the hoopla and narrative about how the game should change and how there should be this adaption and adoption of some kind of new version of basketball, the basketball was great. We saw it with the final game of the regular season. We saw it throughout the 82 games that we watched. We were privy to all of it, basically. It was great basketball throughout. And I loved it. It was awesome. Yeah. That's the only thing I wanted to mention. Good basketball.
I'm on the same page. I mean, we started the season with that Boston Celtics almost record-making or breaking, I don't remember. But in the threes that were put up, like everyone starting this narrative around, basketball's broken. And then a few months later, you fast forward that first Cleveland OKC matchup.
Yeah.
And then just a few weeks later, I mean, like you saw the evolution of the season happen right before you, where it was like, absolutely not. It's not just 3 balls going up. This is legitimate competition. Yep. And on top of it just being great basketball, the stars have shown up. There was a lot of conversations around people taking their time and load management and not playing. The amount of the stars battling in the matchups they needed to. You saw it very much on the last day of the season as well today. But people actually playing, like feeling like they're playing for something and they really care to get better. And I really saw that this season for sure. Last but not least, thank you NBA for the drama.
Yes.
This is the Luka trade year.
Oh, right. Yeah, like, that
we
happened.
Covered this league during the craziest shift of events.
Yeah.
In NBA history, maybe? I mean, this is crazy. So thank you for the drama.
To me, I think like this is the year that we all fully embrace the age of parity. And we got to see what can happen when you have a league that can be remade in a year or in a single trade like the Lakers did with the Luka trade. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of fun. There's chaos to that. It's not like hockey where it's randomness. The great players are still great and they still affect the game to an outsized degree, but you can shift your team's future in a weekend. Or if one guy will pick up the phone for you, you can make a move that will change your franchise for the next decade, good or bad. I think that that's a good place to be. The new CBA has made it tough to maintain your status at the top.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not going to be a bad thing. I don't know. That's my takeaway from this year. Yeah.
David Aldridge wrote a piece that I suggest everyone writes about all the teams that are kind of in the middle. Some teams are going to go win championships and some teams are tanking, but there's a lot of teams that are in the middle. Yeah. And Tyrese Halliburton had a really great quote in it talking about the fact that his team can only be together for a certain amount of years because they have to get paid. And so they're just trying to take advantage of it. That's my point, in that I think I saw teams this year truly trying to take advantage of the teams that they had in front of them, the combinations that they had in front of them, because parity is real. And most likely, in order to get these guys paid or to get these guys rings, they're not going to be together for very long. And that is the state of the NBA today.
That's the beauty of it, because everybody thinks they can win. Every single team going into the postseason right now thinks they have a shot at winning. And it's going to be a good playoff. It's going to be very good.
And we didn't even mention Oklahoma City, 68 wins.
Yeah.
Seventh team to ever win that many games. So it could all be moot. That's going to do it for the show. That's it for the regular season. Of course, we're going to be here for the play-in, the playoffs. We've got a stacked schedule coming up. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching us on YouTube. Like and subscribe this video. Leave us a 5-star review. Do all those things that we ask you to do all the time. For Zena Keita and S. Baraheni, I'm Dave DuFour, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us all season.